Welcome to Dental Success Beyond Chairside, the podcast that is dedicated to revolutionising the way dental professionals succeed beyond the dental chair. Join us for a unique blend of insightful interviews with industry experts and valuable tidbits of information to help you thrive in your dental specialist practice. In each 20-minute episode, we'll delve into a variety of topics, including HR, marketing, innovative techniques and systems, and AI, to help you transform your practice and unlock its full potential. Whether you're a dentist, specialist, or oral health therapist looking to enhance your practice, this podcast is your go-to resource for professional, personal, and profitable success. Get ready to go beyond the dental chair and discover what lies ahead in your practice journey with Dental Success Beyond Chairside. Welcome to today's episode of Dental Success Beyond Chairside. Do you know what's required to maximise the sale of your practice when you exit? What should owners be thinking about long before they're ready to sell? Today, I'm joined by someone who knows exactly what makes a practice valuable at the point of sale. Brad Potter is a highly awarded business broker with over 37 years of professional experience specialising in healthcare practices. He's helped hundreds of practice owners through successful sales and succession and understands exactly what buyers are looking for. Brad's joining me in our office today, which is very nice. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. We can't talk too much because Brad's just getting over an illness. Can you share a little bit more about your story, Brad, and what you see practice owners can do to maximise the sale price when they exit?
I suppose my journey started when I was estate manager of Medfin Finance, so back in the late 90s, involved with getting people into their very first practice back then, predominantly financing their equipment. Naturally evolved into selling dental practices. Back in 2008, there was a gentleman called Martin Harris, which a lot of people may know, that did a lot of the roll-up or the corporatisation of medicine, predominantly in West Australia and South Australia. The opportunity came on to then try and sell and assist him in selling dental practices, and that's how it sort of naturally evolved from one putting people into practices, 20 years ago to now selling them out at the other end. We've seen a significant change over that time of the buyers and what the buyers look for. And I suppose the biggest question I get asked is when's the right time to sell my business? It's a really interesting question. And traditionally you will know when the time is right. You don't wake up one day thinking I'm going to sell my practice and then sell it the next day. This is a long-term type thing. This is often the only investment that a lot of people have. As I say, you get one chance to sell your practice, so you want to make sure that you do it right. What we've found over the last 6 to 12, 18 months is the actual average age of the buyer is actually got younger. Traditionally, the sellers were in their 60s, 70s. We're now finding that a lot of our buyers are well and truly in their late 40s, early 50s.
The buyers or the sellers?
The sellers, sorry.
Sellers, that's okay.
So the sellers are in their 50s and 60s. And what we're finding is that people are now becoming a lot of lifestyle workers. Most healthcare professionals now only want to work part-time. What we've seen post-COVID is that a lot of people have been left, as I say, holding the baby. Their associates of having European holidays, skiing in Japan, they've left working, and they've realised now I'd rather work 3 or 4 days a week and have my 8 to 10 weeks off a holiday a year. So we're seeing that role reversal change, but the active buyers are still out there. There's a lot of buyers out there. A lot of them are overseas trained buyers, and who really just want to have their own practice and their own business and their own stability here in West Australia.
No, that's interesting. So I obviously met you, Brad, through Medfin when we were financing. Oh, actually, I met you through the ANZ Bank when I was at the ANZ, I think. Anyway, and then we did have to sell our practice, as you know, so Brad sold our practice for us. This series is all about sustainability, so it's nice to know that there's lots of buyers out there. And just sustainability-wise, what do you believe would create a higher price for a practice when they're ready to sell?
A lot of the older practitioners have spent no money on their practice whatsoever. We talk about computerisation. I think most practices now are computerised, but I've still come across some practices that have a Kalamazoo system, which is the old manual payment system where you slide the ledger down and rip off the top copy of the receipt. Some people still just use the computer for just purely the appointment book or taking accounts. But really, most practices now are computerized. The equipment in some practices are very good and high-end practices. A lot of equipment in a lot of practices. You see lasers, $100,000 lasers just sitting in the corner collecting dust. But the type of equipment people look for now is that, one, is it digitalized, which is, most practices are. EMS airflow is a flavour that people sort of look for things in practices. OPGs or cone beams are two bits of equipment that people would certainly look for. I suppose the age and the wear and tear of the equipment. I had a practice settle last week, and the week before settlement, the compressor, the suction, and the autoclave all died the week of settlement. So the poor old seller had about $30,000 to spend just so his practice was saleable. Anyone sold a house, every time you sell a house, the same sort of thing, the dishwasher and the water system blows up and the pool pump blows up. So it's very similar to dental, that you get your equipment serviced regularly. I suppose a quick answer to your question is that, one, the practice has to present nicely when you come in. So, aesthetically, a coat of paint, uncluttered, or decluttered, because you certainly want to create a good environment for, one, when your clients come in, but also as a potential buyer when they're coming in, that the place is actually well presented. The age of the chairs, certainly people will look at, because they are an expensive item to have to replace. If you have to replace a dental chair, that's anything from $30,000 to $100,000. A lot of left-handers out there too. So I've sort of gathered that over the years that, if you're looking at selling and looking at replacing some of your equipment, then maybe certainly consider a ambidextrous chair that swings both ways, because certainly that's going to be an advantage to someone that comes in, especially if they are left-handed. There's been quite a few practices which we haven't sold because the person says, I just can't work in it and I'm not willing to replace the chairs. Certainly, if you are at that stage where you are getting close, I would certainly look at a chair that you can swing left and right-handed to cover that. Things like cabinetry and those types of things, people get caught up with the colour of the paint. Cosmetic changes can be made quite easily and quite cost effective, as long as everything's functional and serviceable. The last thing you want to do is been spending $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 on a practice, and then getting in there the week later and having to spend another $200,000 or $300,000 on replacing all the equipment, which some people choose to do, but that's a personal choice. But from a seller's point of view, if they maintain their equipment, get it serviced regularly, have a service record on the equipment that they've got, then certainly it makes it in a good position for a buyer to come in and can start working from day one. Because what we're finding is that to start a practice up from scratch is anything between $3,000 to $4,000 a square metre for the fit out,
just talking about that,
plus your equipment. 100 square metre practice, $400,000 plus another $300,000 equipment. So you're spending $700,000 to start a practice with no patients. Buying a practice that has a cash flow, that patients are coming through the door. Yes, the equipment may be old, but at least you've got the serviceability to be able to start servicing that borrowing. Once you've transferred that goodwill over from the seller to the buyer, you can then start looking at what capital expenditure, the toys that I say that the toys want to play with and have. So that's one of the big things that people look at.
So obviously equipment, the presentation of the practice is really big. My thing is systems as well. So systemizing your practice so everything is already there. You've got policies, procedures, whether they're scripts, videos, all held in a digital file. What are your thoughts with regard to that?
I think it's crucial, especially if you've got a change of staff. Traditionally, when a practice changed hands, the staff normally would stay. In some instances, the staff don't choose to stay. They don't want to stay with the new owner. Those practices that have got systems, process, manuals in place that a new employee can step into and open there, okay, this is what we do in this situation, or this is how we treat our new patients, or this is how we do our recalls, or those systems and those processes, which do take time. I think when we went through the process of accreditation, I probably had 3 or 4 people who actually came to say, I'm going to sell my practice because I just don't want to go through that process of the accreditation. It's not compulsory. It's never been compulsory or mandatory, but the initial thoughts was it was going to be. Certainly, if the practices have gone through the accreditation process, they should have some reasonable good systems and processes in place. But just the day-to-day operations on how a practice should run, most practices probably don't have that in place. You ask them, it's a bit like a partnership agreement. When I go to a practice and they ask about their partnership agreement, I said, what does the partnership agreement say? We never got around to doing that. Well, that's the glue that makes it sick. That's the prenup that actually makes it all work. And having those things in place, it makes life a lot easier down the track. But sometimes the tougher conversations that people just don't like to have, and dentists and doctors traditionally don't like having those tough conversations. They find it very confronting and they feel like they're questioning their other partner. But I say it's a bit like a marriage. Once you're in there, and there needs to be a way out if you need to get out. That's the rules of engagement of how you get out of an agreement or arrangement by having it in writings. I think documenting your systems and your processes, so then in the event a staff member leaves, a new staff member starts, they can pick up and hit the ground pretty much running straight away.
Then obviously you've got all of your letters and all of your templates and everything set up as well. So if you've got all that already in the system, that immediately adds value for the new person coming in.
Well, the less that someone has to do when they start a practice, because the problem is most buyers don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
So they come in there and it's all rose-colored glasses and everything's all rosy until things start to break down. A key staff member leaves, the practice manager resigns, or something happens within in the process, and it all starts to break down, and they start to panic because clinically they're spending all their time in the surgery and they don't know what's going on when they're not in the surgery. And I suppose that's the biggest thing, is that yes, people do want responsibilities. People do want to know what their roles is, their positions. Though the dentist doesn't think that people do, they actually do. And people like responsibility. They like accountability. They like to be needed and be part of a team. The more that you can give them, it makes your life as a dentist and a clinician far much easier than being micromanaging everything when simply you can't do it.
The thing is, Brad, a lot of those practices that have those systems in place, their profitability is going to be higher. Their staff's going to be the same. They're attracting the right client. They're getting those referrals from those clients, and they're actually retaining those patients as well. That's quite important in the reputation. I'm assuming if you're selling a practice, if you've got that great reputation with patients coming in and staying and them referring the same ones, doing high value. And
I think your productivity as a dentist is going to go up if you've got good systems and processes around you, because all you have to do is concentrate on the patient. Nothing worse than, you're on the patients and you think, oh, geez, I've got to get the pays done by 5 o'clock and then I've got to get this done, I've got to get that done. Where, if you have the systems in place and you're outsourcing some of those roles and responsibilities, your life as a dentist is going to be far less stressful, because it's stressful enough as it is, just treating your patients and dealing with their expectations and the family's expectations and the wife's expectations. I think at the end of the day, if you can just clinically do the good thing by the best thing by your patient, the thing was the productivity will go up, the money will automatically follow, and I think you'll be a far happier practitioner.
Now, we touched on partnership before, which is fine, and obviously having those agreements in place. A lot of associates might buy the practice from the owner. So they might have been working there for a while. And then when it comes to sell and it's got, okay, we've got Goodwill. And then the associate goes, well, that's my Goodwill. Why should I pay for my own Goodwill?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts with regard to that, and perhaps protecting the owner?
It's a difficult one, because owners are reluctant to put on associates purely for that thing. One, either they're going to step up and leave and go down around the corner. I believe that, if you've been paid to do the work as an associate, then the patients are still owned by the practice as such. I always have a leaning to the long-term loyal employee that has been there, because you've got to understand that if someone's been there for 10 years, they built a client base off your existing clients, but they've also brought family and friends and other bits and pieces and people to the table. To me, if I was selling my practice and my associate came to me after 10 years and said I wanted to buy the practice, one, I think you need to consider it seriously when they do ask the question, because if they are raising that question, that if they don't buy this practice, the likelihood is that they will leave and go somewhere else. And I've had people do that had the opportunity, and I'm sick to death of asking. So I've sold them a practice. Then 6 months later, their principals rang me up and said, oh, I want to sell my practice. And I said, well, you had your buy there 6 months ago. He goes, oh, I wasn't ready to sell then. I said, well, I think you were, but I just don't think you want to let go at that stage. There is an emotional attachment to a lot of practices. Some people have had them for a long time, and letting go is not difficult. But I think if I was the owner of a practice and had a good associate, I'd be discounting the Goodwill, I think, to a certain degree. Even if it's 10% or 20%. It doesn't have to be giving away the farm. It's interesting that 10 years is a long time to keep an employee these days. Actually, having someone for 2 or 3 years these days is almost classed as a long-term employees. I think it's going to be right for you, and it's going to be right for them. And I do a lot of internal transactions, probably 1 or 2 a month, where the buyer's been given internally from the seller. At the end of the day, you've still got to negotiate and navigate your way through that. And internal transactions are actually harder than external transaction.
Do you think it's worthwhile, before you get an associate on, to do a valuation to see where your practice is at that moment, to see what value they might have added coming on as an associate, or is that not really worth it?
You can certainly look at the numbers and you can do a valuation retrospectively. I do that quite a bit for the family court, where they want a valuation done as a particular date. It certainly can be done at any time. One thing people do look at when buying a practice is look at the revenue by each provider. So who's actually generating the revenue? I've had instances where we've had practices which the hygiene department was actually making more profit than the general dental practice. 2 hygienists, both generating about $350,000 each, half-hour appointments with a nurse, with an EMS airflow in a country town. They were, you do the numbers on that, they were getting paid $65 an hour, but they were billing out good numbers, and they're both working for 4 full days a week. So, but you certainly, when you look at an associate type driven practice, so you've got the principal there, say you're doing $2 million, you've got the principal doing $1 million, and you're doing 2 associates or 3 associates doing 250 or 300. Is the risk profile on that lower than if you had 2 people doing, $1 million each? Because if one of them does leave, to replace them is a lot harder than someone that's just doing 250, 350, 100. And people ask me all the time is, how much should my associates be making? It's a really tricky question because, one, it comes down to what your overheads are. So, if you're in a low rent area and your overheads are low, then maybe they don't need to be making them up. But if you're in a shopping centre where you're paying $550, $600 a square metre, these guys are going to be billing out $500 plus an hour to actually cover themselves. So if you've got a dentist that's generating $350,000 a year, and that they're working full time and they've got a full-time nurse, they really aren't making any money. No. They're probably maybe more working as a hygienist. What they do is they're freeing you up, I suppose, to do some of the better stuff. The higher end treatment that does actually make you some money. But I think, your associates, I personally think that associates don't get enough mentoring.
Yes, I think I agree.
I think the principal is so busy making money in their own surgery that they actually don't have the time and effort to put into their associates, but they certainly whinge and moan about them not generating as much money as what they should be. Then I throw it back to them and say, well, are you putting the time and effort into them to get them up to speed? Because the new graduates are coming out with not a lot of experience. They might have done 1 extraction. They might have done one crown, 1 endo. They just haven't done a lot. The only experience they're going to get is hands-on in the practice. And really, my advice to principals is to be putting half a day a week just to discuss investing back in their people, the treatment planning. They do need the time and they need the effort, and then they'll be far better dentists down the track, and it'll be far more rewarding for you as the business owner.
Is there anything that you'd like to share that we haven't discussed?
I think that covers quite a bit. When it's ready to sell, I think you'll know yourself. More often than not, it's an instant in life that prompts someone to sell. Death of a family member, but more often it's a staff member. That a key staff member's been in the practice for a long period of time. They've resigned, and the principal just goes, "Oh, what am I going to do now? It's like losing my left hand." Often we find it's normally staff that certainly is a catapult to push them over the edge to look up and sell their practice. But as you say, dentistry is still a good business to have if the systems and process and is run properly. And then I think the enjoyment, because most people, the question I ask is, do you enjoy dentistry? Or is it running a business that you don't like? 9 times out of 10, it's actually running the business that they don't like. They actually don't mind being a dentist and happy to work 3-4 days a week, treat their patients and go home again and have their 8 to 10 weeks holiday skiing in Japan and traveling through Europe.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Brad, for joining me here today. And for more information about Brad, you can visit his website, and that is on our show notes. Thank you so much again. Really appreciate you coming over and doing it together. It's nice. It's only our 2nd or 3rd face-to-face, so that's great. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Bye.
In our next episode, we'll shift focus from selling practices to how we run them day to day with sustainability in mind. I'll be joined by Dr. Ash Shah, Principal Dentist at Shenton Park Village Dental and a passionate advocate for eco-dentistry. We'll explore the practical ways she's reduced waste, embraced sustainable materials, and embedded environmentally conscious choices into every part of her practice. Thanks for tuning in to Dental Success Beyond Chairside. See you next time.